2025 was okay for Marvel. No make, no break. Which is funny since last year's video was called 2025 will be make or break for Marvel. But I don't think it ended up being either. Most of it was fine. Brave New World was a mess. The cartoons were all great. Ironheart was fine. Daredevil sorta worked. Fantastic Four was a solid hit, and Thunderbolts was a crowd favorite that underperformed. But the thing about 2025 is that the real results aren't going to come until 2026 is over. Because sure, Thunderbolts did not break 400 million, but it bought a lot of goodwill. Same goes for Fantastic Four. Not a billion-dollar movie, but one people really liked. Daredevil had a lot of great moments that didn't necessarily come together, but the season set up an interesting world and found its footing eventually. 2025 was investments, and this is the year we see if they pay off. Almost every Marvel project in 2026 is some sort of sequel or second season or continuation of some much larger story, and the school of thought has gone. Sure, your Captain Americas and your Thors making a lot of money would be nice, but Avengers is where the real money starts showing up. People love event movies, and Marvel has a few of those coming out this year. And since 2025 didn't break Marvel, it's up to 2026 to make it. So I want to take a moment to look at 2026. Talk about what I'm excited about, what I'm maybe a little worried about, set some expectations, and I'm going to start with a show that should be familiar if you watched last year's video. Okay, so Wonder Man made it into last year's video since it was expected to release in late 2025. Not sure what happened, but things changed and it was moved to January 2026 and got my least favorite thing, the drop all at once release. And no, it's not just because I can make videos about a weekly show way easier than make videos about something like this, but because I enjoy the conversation, the discourse week to week, people discovering new favorite characters, sharing memes, being on the same page. Part of why the game Dispatch took off the way it did. People like to have something to talk about. But alas, all 8 episodes of Wonder Man are now expected to release on January 27th. If you asked me a few months ago, I would be worried. Marvel does not always do the drop all at once technique. Daredevil and Agatha, which I both enjoyed, released weekly, and Echo, which lost me, was dropped all at once. So the fact that instead of going weekly, Wonder Man was being released all at once felt like a bad sign. But then Marvel Zombies dropped all at once, and that show was pretty good, so now I don't know what to expect. Maybe it's just completely arbitrary, or maybe it has something to do with the metric that no one but Kevin the AI understands. I don't know. But ignoring the release changes, let's look at what Wonder Man is bringing to the table. So you've got a comedy starring Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Simon Williams, a struggling actor who finds out that a movie studio is working on a reboot of a Flash Gordon type character named Wonder Man and does everything he can to get the role, presumably because the character meant something special to Simon. It's unclear how early into the series Simon gets the job. The trailer would suggest the hunt for the role is the bulk of the show, but I have a feeling there's a lot we have not seen. Many characters that seem pretty important don't make it into the trailer at all, so I have a feeling this is the first half of the season, maybe the first third. Along for the role is Ben Kingsley's Trevor Slattery, last seen as Wenwu's prisoner in Shang-Chi. He appears to be Simon's mentor. Then you've got Superman and Triangle of Sadness's Zlatko Buric playing the eccentric director in charge of this movie, and the trailer led us to believe this show was two things. First, a comedy taking shots at Hollywood. Things like reboots, method acting, cheesy 70s sci-fi schlock, and race-blind casting. I'm sure the hashtag WonderManWoke or WokerMan will show up somewhere in the series. And then second, some sort of love letter to superhero cinema. Young Simon seems inspired by the old Wonder Man movie, and I imagine part of the conclusion this series will come to is yes, the industry is cynical and breaks your heart, but it also produces a unique sort of magic. But then there's the third thing that this series is probably going to be about, which the trailer did not even kind of hint at. In a single clip that was released a couple months before the show came out, we see Simon talking with Trevor, and Simon starts to get angry, which activates some sort of superpower. Meaning, Simon has Wonder Man powers already, but instead of being an asset like it is in the comics, Simon needs to hide his powers because they make him a liability in this world. That's clever. And it creates an interesting tension where I'm sure using your powers to be a hero will come at the expense of your dream of playing a superhero. It's an interesting take on Wonder Man. In the comics, Simon is a disgraced businessman who gets ionic powers like strength and durability and works with Zemo and the Masters of Evil before turning good and dying. Simon came back from the dead, but had a hard time finding a new lane. He didn't really want to be a superhero, but what else do you do with incredible ionic superpowers? The answer was Simon took his talents to Hollywood, first as a stuntman who cannot be killed, but then as an actor. Simon was the superhero turned movie star. And here, Simon is the superhero who wants to be a movie star and can, as long as no one figures out he's a superhero. And on top of that, if Simon's powers are tied to anger, like this clip would suggest, they can use the industry's aversion to powered actors as a way to play with the idea of stars being difficult to work with, or maybe even specifically how black actors deal with the double standard around showing emotions. Maybe. That one's just a guess, but there are opportunities there. Wonder Man is being run by Destin Daniel Cretton, who made the incredibly popular Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and is currently working on directing Spider-Man Brand New Day. We'll get to it. But I find the other member of this creative team more intriguing, writer Andrew Guest. Because I'll be honest, the trailer did not make me laugh very much. The terrorist line earned a chuckle, but many of the jokes just didn't land. And this show is a comedy, so it is going to live or die on the jokes. And to be fair, comedies tend to not translate well in trailers. Comedy requires setup, repetition, very specific timing, and trailers cannot always sell jokes. This year, I had a really good time with the Naked Gun reboot, and while the OJ joke killed every time I saw it in a theater with an audience, other jokes did not, but in the movie, they totally worked. So it's hard to judge whether a show will be funny based on the trailer. It's usually more helpful to look at the creators behind the project. Andrew Guest has a very promising resume. He worked as a writer and script editor on Community. He wrote an episode of 30 Rock, my favorite comedy of all time, and episodes of Marry Me, Suburgatory, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And he also produced Hawkeye. So I have a good feeling about Guest. And I think there is plenty here to make fun of. HBO's The Franchise tried to do it and fell short. Apple TV's The Studio got it, a little more of what is funny about blockbuster filmmaking. And HBO's Barry was surprisingly on point when talking about big movie studios. But maybe this is one of those things where no one is going to make these jokes better than Marvel themselves, and the creators who have seen a million of these things succeed and fail. And sure, they'll probably pull a bunch of punches, but as long as there is at least a little bit of honesty and sincerity, I think Wonder Man has the opportunity to do something very, very funny by telling the story of the chaos of creating a superhero movie at the same time as Marvel is trying to get audiences excited about its biggest movie of this decade. So next, we go from the West Coast to the East Coast for Daredevil Born Again Season 1 was a push. Did not completely succeed, but did not completely fail. Audiences watched it. No, it didn't break streaming records or anything, but it's an R-rated show on what people think of as the family-friendly streaming service. The reviews were average. I think everyone agrees it didn't hit the highs of Netflix Seasons 1 or 3, but did not hit the lows of Season 2, and I think we know why. Born Again Season 1 was one of the shows written and shot before the Marvel TV pivot. After some public fumbles, Marvel retooled their TV department, began to lean on familiar techniques that they had up until now ignored, like the use of showrunners to organize productions under one creative vision. This would mean future series that would show up on the list were organized differently from the start. The problem was Born Again Season 1 was well into production at the time of the pivot, so Marvel needed to make some tough choices. After all, just because they didn't have a showrunner didn't mean everything they shot was unusable, so Marvel took what they believe worked from their original shoot and added a bunch of scenes and plot lines that brought it all together. Another issue with Born Again Season 1 was that it didn't feel as Daredevil-y as Marvel suspected audiences would want. So Marvel added some characters and even recast some actors to make Born Again feel like its Netflix predecessor. All this led to Daredevil Born Again Season 1 being a mixed bag. While all of the performances were winners, some of the episodes felt strange. CGI was unpolished, plot lines resolved awkwardly, and some of the detours felt pointless. But certain things worked. The plot line about the White Tiger being targeted by cops felt very Daredevil. Fisk ascending to the office of New York City mayor and creating an extrajudicial army of masked enforcers to carry out his anti-vigilante agenda was both incredibly timely and the natural next step for this universe. Matt's interactions with Frank and Karen, and obviously Fisk, played as well as ever. A deeper dive into Bullseye's psyche was a neat idea, and some of the action felt as visceral and angry as that first hallway fight. So why did I just spend so much time talking about Season 1 in this video about Season 2? Well, because the expectations are in a very complicated place. Fans of the series don't know what to expect, since the production of Season 1 was so messy and the resulting series didn't fully sink or swim. And I think those expectations are going to be a huge part of the narrative around Season 2. So what can we expect? Well, I honestly, and this isn't just my Marvel fanboy brain talking, I think Season 2 was in a good place. Most of the story beats that did not quite work about Season 1 seem to be from the pre-pivot era, and many of the elements that I just described as working were not only reshoots, but specifically added to give Born Again its essential daredeviliness. The Bullseye plotline, Karen's return, the Punisher confrontation. So a second season, in the hands of those creatives from the start, should, in theory, lead to a season that's good. A cohesive vision created by the people who understood what a great Daredevil show could be, and one ready to call back to what worked about the original series while driving that narrative forward. And the first season does end on a pretty definitive note, one that was apparently completely created by the new team. Fisk has taken total control of the police, Matt is public enemy number 1, and Daredevil is assembling an army to take back his city. And that creates some unique opportunities. Daredevil's army is a fun way to consolidate and take stock of Marvel's pile of street-level characters. We know Kristen Ritter's back as Jessica Jones, Mike Coulter has been teasing a return as Luke Cage, Finn Jones also exists, and then each of those characters comes with a team of allies that would be fun to see in this fight. Then you've got guys like Echo, Swordmaster, and Kate Bishop, who all have personal beefs with Kingpin. Daredevil Born Again Season 2 might be the street-level Avengers we hoped Defenders would be. And this team-up doesn't need to be just fan service. Matt getting the band together is the logical next step for Daredevil's arc. No single hero can fight Fisk fascism alone. It takes a hero who can inspire people. And Daredevil has not only made a ton of friends over his career, but he has become a symbol and strived to maintain his heroic identity at the cost of personal gratification. This could be that payoff. Daredevil is someone the other heroes and the regular people of the city really trust. So I think leading an army like this against Fisk has always been his endgame. What remains to be seen is if the new Daredevil team, led by Dario Scardapane, can put together more than just a few entertaining episodes. Can they handle the pressure and land this plane? Because if they cannot, I could imagine a world where we are done with MCU Daredevil. One mediocre season followed by a bad one is enough to kill any show, especially one as high profile and expensive as this. But still, I have high hopes for Born Again Season 2. Speaking of that, let's talk about Born Again's surprise spin-off. This is a weird one since, for starters, I thought the special presentation as a format was dead. We got Werewolf by Night, the Guardians Holiday Special, and then nothing for 3 years. When originally it sort of seemed like the special presentation was going to be the weird little character springboard that showed up once or twice a year to explain who the Black Knight was or whatever. But it just vanished until it seems like John Barenthal has willed it back into existence for his Punisher one-shot. So how did this come to be? Well, during the filming of Born Again Season 1, Barenthal came up with the idea for a special about the Punisher. And we don't know what that is. We know it's written by Barenthal and the project's director, Reynaldo Marcus Green, who worked with Barenthal previously on We Own This City and King Richard. And if you look at what stories Green tends to tell, and where Frank Castle is right now, you start to see some overlap. Green's work frequently tackles the morality of law enforcement, from a community reacting to police killing an unarmed man in Monsters and Men, to a corrupt Baltimore Police Department in We Own This City. So it comes as no surprise that he would gravitate towards Barenthal's version of the Punisher, considering Season 1 ended with Frank fighting a bunch of the crooked cops who wore the Punisher symbol, and then calling the rest of them clowns. We're pretty light on details about this special presentation. We know that Netflix Punisher alum Jason R. Moore will return as Frank's friend Curtis Hoyle, and it seems like, based on some on-set photos, the villain of the special will be a notorious Punisher villain known as Ma Nucci. Nucci was introduced in the Welcome Back Frank miniseries from the early 2000s, written by Garth Ennis, with art by Steve Dillon and Jimmy Palmiotti. It's 12 issues and a pretty fast read, but the gist of the story is that Frank returns to New York and goes after the Nucci crime family. This crusade ends with Castle killing about half of Nucci's goons and feeding Ma to polar bears, which leaves her quadriplegic. And if you're like me before reading this, you think that's a pretty weird way to kill somebody. How did Frank have access to polar bears? Turns out it's more like that time Punisher 2099 found a guy in a lab and used a particle accelerator to create super bullets so that he could kill that man's soul. In this story, Punisher ended up in a zoo and baited the animals to kill the Nuccis. Anyway, Ma survives the attack and goes after Frank, eventually finding his address and sending an enormous man just named the Russian to kill Frank. Frank smothers the Russian with a big neighbor and then goes and kills Manucci. This story is sort of what the 2004 Thomas Jane Punisher movie is based on, since all of those supporting characters like Joan, Bumpo, and Spacker Dave, as well as the Russian, are introduced in Welcome Back Frank. But instead of Nucci, the movie used an original character named Howard Saint, played by John Travolta. And I wouldn't be surprised if this Punisher special we get is heavily based on Welcome Back Frank. You'd get Ma, the Russian, a bunch of kooky neighbors for Frank to befriend and then abandon, and an army of crooked cops working for the Nuccis. One other thing we don't know about the special is exactly when it will air and how that will tie into Born Again Season 2. Will this bridge the gap between seasons? Will this act as an epilogue? The answer might be neither. Reports have suggested that it may be released during Season 2 of Born Again, which is interesting because it certainly seems like the special will take place in the same New York City that is currently at war with vigilantes. So will this be Frank's crusade against the Fisk administration, or will this be something completely different? We don't know. Tonally, Barenthal has said it will be true to the comic character, and it seems like part of what that means is it's going to be violent, probably earning a mature rating, which means we have a special written and championed by John Barenthal, a man who seems to really understand and care about this character. It's directed by Reynaldo Marcus Green, who's worked on many prestige projects that also tend to focus on social issues, and it might take inspiration, or at least a few characters, from one of the most popular Punisher series, Welcome Back Frank. And the really nice thing is, if this doesn't land, I don't think Marvel loses very much. It's just a fun passion project that won't make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. But if it works, you get weeks of Barenthal talking about his love for the character, and it could get people excited about what is inexplicably the Punisher's other big project this year. The more I learn about Spider-Man Brand New Day, the less I understand. Okay, so this is a sequel that follows No Way Home's ending, where nobody knows who Peter is. He's on his own, getting his GED, and ladies, he's single. So Brand New Day is going for a sort of fresh start. We're resetting the character, giving him the street-level story that fans have been clamoring for, it would seem. Because here's the thing, we know next to nothing about this movie. Here are the facts. I'm going to stay away from what I think might be spoilers, but who knows. Number 1, Tom Holland plays Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Number 2, he wears this suit. Number 3, the movie is directed by Shang-Chi director Destin Daniel Cretton. Number 4, the movie is written by Chris McKenna, who wrote the other 3 MCU Spider-Man movies as well as the screenplay for the Lego Batman movie, and wrote a handful of Community episodes including Remedial Chaos Theory. Number 5, this movie is also written by Eric Summers, who also wrote the other 3 MCU Spider-Man movies, as well as the screenplay for the Lego Batman movie, and wrote the Community episode Basic Intergluteal Numismatics. Number 6, the movie is named after Brand New Day, the Spider-Man comic following One More Day, where Peter traded his marriage for Aunt May's life. Number 7, MJ, played by Zendaya, and Ned Leeds, played by Jacob Batalon, are confirmed to return, although the size of their roles are unclear. Could be a cameo since their previous knowledge of Peter Parker was wiped in the last movie. Number 8, John Barenthal is joining the cast as Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. He seems to be a frenemy to Spider-Man because of their clashing moralities. Number 9, Mark Ruffalo is also joining the cast as Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk. Number 10, Michael Mando is returning after his up until now left hanging post-credit scene as prisoner Mac Gargan. It's unclear if he will go full Scorpion or just be a criminal with a grudge against Spider-Man. Number 11, Marvin Jones III is reprising his role from Into the Spider-Verse as Spider-Man villain Lonnie Lincoln, aka Tombstone, although he'll almost certainly be a new version of the character. Number 12, there are a couple of other actors who are cast but their roles aren't public, including Severance's Tramel Tillman, The Bears, Lisa Colon Zayas, and Stranger Things' Sadie Sink. We'll get to her later. Number 3, the movie is set to release on July 31st, 2026, which means after Daredevil Season 2, and probably after the Punisher special presentation, and definitely before Avengers Doomsday. I'm saying this matter-of-factly because I want to separate what we know from what we think we know or what we just plain old made up. For instance, we don't know who the actual villain in this movie is. Reports point to Gargan and Tombstone being minor roles, perhaps to set up bigger moments in the future. But if that's true, then what's this movie about? When we know nothing but this is the one with Mysterio, we can assume a few things based on how that character usually works in the comics. In the beginning of the story, everyone will think Mysterio is a hero or something, then it'll turn out he's using some technology to fake his superpowers, and he is actually a bad guy. So as things get announced, it all fits together. Hydro Man isn't far from home. Oh, I bet he's a Mysterio Mysterio illusion. Nick Fury isn't far from home. Oh, I bet he's working with but suspicious of Mysterio. But like, we're less than a year from Brand New Day and we don't know who the bad guy is. So we don't know what this movie is about, and that leads to speculation. There have been rumors for a while that new-ish Spider-Man villain Mr. Negative is going to be the big bad, which, okay, maybe. That would set up some potential storylines. Could be a gang war with the two other gang-related villains. They could follow Mr. Negative's backstory and be another, hey, this guy is nice, but turns out to be a supervillain kind of movie. But who knows? On one hand, it's exciting, and the creative team working on Brand New Day has proven they can do this, so they could create something new and surprising. But on the other hand, I'm a little worried, because it seems very unfocused. Sort of like an Ant-Man movie with Kang and MODOK and the Great Value Micronauts, or a Flash movie with Batman and Supergirl and General Zod. And I'd say this fear is most pronounced when speculating about Sadie Sink's character. She's a girl in her 20s, so same age as Spider-Man, and she has red hair. I'm gonna throw out a couple characters that she would make sense as based on that alone. And none of this is based on leaks or set photos or anything like that, so I would not count this as a spoiler. This is all just reckless speculation. She could be Mary Jane, but we already have an MJ, you say. Well, that's Michelle Jones, and she's an offbeat artist type. This could be closer to classic comic Mary Jane, the actress/model bombshell girl next door. She could be Firestar. Angelica was Spider-Man's amazing friend in the 80s cartoon of the same name. She's a mutant, so this could be a good way to throw another mutant into the mix before an X-Men movie. She could be Black Cat, but in a wig. Felicia Hardy is not exactly a master of disguise, but a cat burglar can usually throw on a costume to get close to a mark without being noticed. She's the kind of femme fatale villain that would be very interesting now that Peter is single. She could be Mayday Parker. Perhaps from an alternate universe, Sadie could be playing the child of Peter and MJ who needs Peter's help to get home or something. She could be playing Teresa Parker, Peter's long-lost sister who is a spy and shows up out of nowhere, and also maybe she's not really his sister, it's unclear. She could be Jean Grey, the psychic founding member of the X-Men, who we're probably going to get a new one of eventually. She could also be one of the other Jean-like X-Men, like Rachel Summers or Hope Summers. She could be Rachel Cole, a Marine whose family is slaughtered at her wedding, leading her to become the Punisher's apprentice. And then there are a bunch of characters she could be playing that usually don't have red hair, but who cares? They can't for this. And some have been rumored who are such specific deep cuts that that's probably who she's playing, but I'm not going to talk about them here. Either way, it makes a big difference if the female lead of this movie is Mary Jane or Jean Grey or Black Cat or someone else. And right now, everything is on the table. The day of filming looked promising with actual Spider-Man swinging through the streets on a stunt rig. I understand why they want to show that off. It isn't something Tom Holland's Spider-Man does all that much. Pretty sure the only time we've seen him just web sling through Manhattan is in that bit from Infinity War. Is there a lot of potential here? Yes. Do I like how little we know about this movie? Sort of. Destin Daniel Cretton does not have as many of these movies under his belt as I would like. He's producing that Wonder Man show, so maybe if that's a home run, I'll have more confidence in this project. But as of now, I think this is going to be the most surprising project of 2026, and that could be a good or a bad thing. But let's shift mediums to what feels like one of 2026's safest bets. It feels sort of obvious, but Marvel Animation has been on a bit of a hot streak lately, and it kind of all started with X-Men 97 Season 1. Don't get me wrong, I thought What If was fun, and it led to a lot of wild moments, but X-Men 97 feels like the first big absolute winner, and it led to some other critical successes. Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1 was terrific. Eyes of Wakanda was interesting, and Marvel Zombies was a surprising amount of fun. So I'm thrilled that 2026 is bringing us 2 animated projects, and one is the second season of the show that started this rally, X-Men 97. Now first, I know we're currently calling it X-Men 97 Season 2, but should it just be X-Men 98 now? Or X-Men 2000? Or just New X-Men? Or something? I guess X-Men 97 is a brand that people like, so why mess with it? But when these hit the 2000s, I think we're going to need to reconsider the name. So we don't know a lot about Season 2. The cast is returning, a trailer screened at Comic-Con that showed us a bunch of potential plot points and a ton of new characters. I'm just going to rattle tell him off here. I don't think this is anything that the first trailer won't show. You've got Morrison Quietly era costumes, Omega Red is back, Colossus is back, Danger, the X-Men training room gone sentient, is going to make her first appearance. Polaris seems to be getting a larger role than Magneto Child in Shadow. She's even going to be voiced by Scream's Neve Campbell. Some of the new X-Kids show up, like Wing, Penance, and Quentin Quire. Psylocke and Archangel are going to rejoin the team. X-Factor is doing something as a group, although it seems like maybe without Havoc. And then there's some sort of Department K Weapon Plus mission featuring Deathstrike, Sabretooth, and Morph. So that all sounds pretty fun. It appears the focal point of the season, or at least a focal point, is going to be the mutant tyrant Apocalypse, which makes sense since he's looking over Gambit's remains in the post-credits scene, and both groups of time-displaced X-Men are going to run into him. That's fun. I love Apocalypse. He played a kind of small role in the original series, but still made a big impression. And I'm excited to see Ross Marquand get a chance to really open that character up. It should be a huge deal. I'm also looking forward to the made-to-order Marvel Legends Apocalypse figure, which I did reserve. I don't know what to say, besides the first season was incredible. I have a feeling this will be too. After that, the release order gets a little fuzzy, but let's move forward with Marvel's last live-action show of 2026. Agatha All Along is probably my favorite live-action series Marvel has produced. It just front-to-back rules. WandaVision is probably my second favorite, so I am very much looking forward to what is apparently the spiritual successor to those two series, Vision Quest. Originally, it was going to be led by WandaVision and Agatha's creator, Jack Schaefer, but after Marvel reorganized their TV division, they decided to leave Schaefer in charge of Agatha and hire a new showrunner exclusively for Vision Quest. They ended up with Terry Matalas, who is well known for, among other things, showrunning the third season of Star Trek Picard, which people who have seen the show refer to as the good one. So right off the bat, we have an experienced showrunner known for working on heady science fiction taking control of Vision Quest. That's a good sign. Then our cast. We've got Bettany back as White Vision, who seems to be struggling to merge his consciousness with everything he remembered from Hex Vision. This will apparently involve meeting the other Marvel AIs who Vision has apparently been saving copies of. So that means we're also going to get the return of James Spader as Ultron, apparently in robot and human form. Then there's Agent Carter's James Darcy taking on the role of Jarvis 1.0. Friday, Tony's second AI, which we meet for the first time in Age of Ultron, and is usually voiced by Banshees of Inisherin's Kerry Condon, is now going to be played by Into the Badlands' Orla Brady. The sunglasses that control the drones, aka Edith, are going to be played here by Schitt's Creek's Emily Hampshire. Then you've got Dumb E and You, Tony Stark's two robot arms, being personalized here by Henry Lewis and Jonathan Sayer. If you are a nerd like me, you'll recognize them as the leads of The Play That Goes Wrong and two of the founders of Mischief Theater. They're very funny. If you haven't seen any of their stuff, I'd recommend my personal favorite episode of their show, Summer Once Again. It's pretty easy to find online. Anyway, they're great. Happy to see them here. As far as other characters, there are a few that might be spoilers, so I'm going to leave them out of this, but they make plenty of sense in a Vision solo project. Oh, and apparently Paladin is going to show up in the show. He's one of Marvel's many mercenary characters, and here he'll be played by Todd Stashwick, who is a frequent Metalis collaborator, but you probably know him as the Dr. Dakin in that live-action Kim Possible thing. Pretty good. Also, Fahan Tahir's Raza is apparently back. As far as the story for this thing, like many of the projects that are this far out, we're light on details. Bettany has mentioned that the series will be about generational trauma, alluding to Ultron being Vision's father, and I don't know, perhaps some sort of Vision son, who can imagine what that is. Speaking of family, I don't think this series is going to be much like the Visions comic series written by Tom King, with art by Gabriel Hernandez Walta, only because A, nothing anyone has said suggests it will, and B, what if Vision created a seemingly perfect family, but just below the surface it was all a mess? Is grounds that WandaVision has already tread. Don't get me wrong, I think there's room for things like Vision's robot family here, but I doubt it's going to be the take on suburbia that the Visions was. One thing that really intrigued me was that on the Phase Hero podcast, when asked if he had a favorite episode, Terry Matalas described a Vision Quest episodes thusly, quote, "To be honest, they're all very different. Each one of them are different types of movies. So each of them I could say, can't wait for that, can't wait for that. They're all so different, but they all have favorite moments for me." So WandaVision was a take on sitcoms. Agatha was a take on supernatural movies and shows. And now Vision Quest is movies. How could that play out? Well, Ultron is described as being housed behind some sort of firewall and working as an antagonistic voice in Vision's head, so maybe he's getting the Hannibal Lecter treatment, and that episode is Silence of the Visions or something. Maybe the episode with the Goes Wrong guys is a farce. I don't know, but I'm glad to see that Vision Quest is sticking with the pastiches because they've been such a fun part of WandaVision and Agatha all along. So should this be good? Well, these shows, WandaVision and Agatha, have been my favorite of the Disney Plus shows, so why not? The creative seem game, the cast is great, the concept gives them a lot of opportunities to do weird stuff. Fingers crossed. And then we've got one more animated series to talk about before 2026's big finale. So let's look at season 2 of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man was a nice surprise earlier this year. The animation was slick, the character designs were fun, and the story was everything Spider-Man fans wanted from an MCU Spider-Man. A street-level adventure where Peter fights some classic villains with modern origins while also trying to finish his homework and flirt with a cute girl. And it featured an impeccably cast Norman Osborn being played by Coleman Domingo. It also managed to work in some very unusual supporting characters for a Spider-Man show, like Nico Minoru, The Wizard, Amadeus Cho, Finesse, and Wave. It was full of surprises, and it set up plenty of plot threads for the second season to pull. Osborn now has access to the symbiote and some of Peter's blood, which he seems ready to use to create a bunch of supervillains, accidentally or on purpose. Lonnie is getting his usual Tombstone powers, and also seems to now be in charge of the 110th Street Gang. Nico is able to use her magic. Harry is Peter's new guy in a chair. Daredevil has Finesse spying on Peter. A bunch of other villains like Chameleon and Rhino are just out there. Peter knows an armless Dr. Connors. Peter's dad is alive and in prison, and there's a portal to space in Osborn's basement. And that's pretty much all we know about season 2. It will probably do some of those things. The one bit of info we do have is that Gwen Stacy is apparently going to be in the new season as a version of Ghost Spider, and she has some sort of mechanical ball weapon. So I'm guessing her origin will be changed heavily. Also, Charlie Cox is back as Daredevil, so that's nice. The season is expected to release in late 2026, I'm guessing before Doomsday, but who knows. I'm looking forward to it because, like I said earlier, Marvel Animation has been on a hot streak. And now, that leaves the last Marvel project of 2026. I don't think we're ready for Doomsday. And that's not to say I don't think we're prepared for the movie, although you could argue that more Dr. Doom backstory wouldn't hurt. But I don't think we are prepared for what Doomsday is going to feel like. It has been 6 years since Endgame and will be 7 when Doomsday releases. That's more than double the 3 years we usually wait between Avengers movies. And I don't expect Doomsday to get the same reaction as Endgame, but I think we are going to be surprised. Avengers movies are events. They're the kind of thing that people go to the movies for. That's not to say people shouldn't go for non-event movies. It would be great if people went to the theaters to see everything, but event movies are what has proven in a post-pandemic world to get butts in seats. And I have spent the last few years being asked, what do you think about Doomsday? Or at the time, the Kang Dynasty? Is Marvel over? Has the superhero bubble popped? And I think you can make the case that it's definitely deflated quite a bit. I have a feeling that when people are reminded why these Avengers movies get people excited, it's going to hit different. Just seeing Captain America standing next to Mr. Fantastic and Cyclops is going to hit different. It's going to give you that same, oh man, even though I knew this was coming, actually seeing it is special feeling. Seeing the X-Men in what appear to be their classic costumes is going to hit different. Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Magneto, Beast, and Gambit, among others. While the Gen 1 X-Men movies don't get the same attention as the MCU or even DC movies from around the same time, they were a big deal. People in theaters applauded when Wolverine put the mask on. This is that, but for the entire team. And I think Robert Downey Jr. Doom is a weird move, but the man is a compelling actor. Would I rather it be someone new like Cillian Murphy or Mads Mikkelsen, who isn't new but you get the idea? Sure, but I think Marvel knew that. They understood the fan expectations and decided to go in this direction anyway. And I think that's because they have something. Maybe there's a connection between Doom and Stark that means this needs to be Downey. Maybe it's just a great Doom performance, one that only Robert Downey Jr. can deliver. Or maybe it's something completely different. I don't know, but I'll say this. If this was any other franchise movie, like a Batman movie or Fast and the Furious, and Robert Downey Jr. was cast as the villain, that would be a great sign because he's an excellent actor who just won an Oscar and has more money than God. And yes, they're going to pay him an obscene amount of money for this performance, and greed is the disease that rots everyone's brain, but still, he doesn't need to do this. If he did not think it was a good idea and it would ruin his legacy, Robert Downey Jr. could say no. It's a lot of work and a lot of press, but he said yes. And it has become fashionable over the last few years to clown on Joe and Anthony Russo, the directors of Avengers Doomsday. Few have done so more than me. I watched The Gray Man, I watched The Electric State, I watched an episode of Citadel. It's all average at best, and in the case of The Electric State, quite a mess. But because of their recent missteps, I think we've forgotten these guys directed 4 of everyone's favorite Marvel movies: Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. Maybe they need the MCU. Maybe they thrive when they're working with fully sketched out characters we already love with decades of comic history instead of broad strokes from a visual novel. They've also directed some of the coolest fights in superhero movie history. Obviously, there's the airport fight and that Cap versus Bucky fight with the knife, but remember, Infinity War was when Doctor Strange really got exciting, with a bunch of funky spells that turned a black hole into butterflies. Thor arriving in Wakanda is Russo's. Steve picking up the hammer is Russo's. Cap versus Batroc, Tony versus Steve. They create iconic comic book movie moments. And people will say, sure, they're iconic. It's an Avengers movie. Oh, really? What's Thor's iconic moment from Age of Ultron? He's a main character. What is his coolest moment? Or Cap? Every character has a standout moment in every Russo movie. Same goes for the writers of Doomsday, Stephen McFeely and Michael Waldron. Was McFeely's Electric State a good script? No, I just said that, and I'll say it again before the video's done. I really did not like that movie. But McFeely also wrote all the Marvel stuff that the Russos worked on, and Michael Waldron wrote Multiverse of Madness and Loki. These guys know how to do this. Craft fun conflicts, big, crowd-pleasing moments. All they need, it seems like, are characters with some juice. And say what you will about where the MCU is right now. They've had some critical and financial flops. The Marvels severely underperformed, and Quantumania and Brave New World hit critical lows for the franchise. But in all of those instances, the characters worked. Sam Wilson is fun enough to watch. Ant-Man has always been a crowd pleaser. Even Captain Marvel mostly works. None of them are anywhere near the painful characterization of Chris Pratt's character from The Electric State, or Anthony Mackie's character from The Electric State, or Stanley Tucci's character from The Electric State. So take those characters that work, played by actors who everyone likes, and put them in a movie written by the guys who wrote The Winter Soldier and Loki, and directed by the guys who directed Endgame, starring a recent Oscar winner who is also one of the biggest stars on Earth. Add hundreds of millions of dollars to create some top-tier effects. Why are we not thrilled for this thing? I get it. Marvel is not what it was in 2017. The movies and shows are not all hits, and it definitely isn't cool to be excited for its future. But because of that, I think we've forgotten why this worked. And I have a feeling, as this thing gets closer, and as it starts feeling more real, we'll remember, and we'll get excited. And speaking of the Fox X-Men movies, because I love these movies, they are like some of my favorite movies. X-Men 2 is probably like one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. It is fair to admit that, especially compared to the MCU, the actual canon of the X-Men cinematic universe is a disaster. So much so that another awesome video essayist, Lindsay Ellis, made a video called Trying to Make Sense of the X-Men Cinematic Universe Timeline. In it, Lindsay and Angelina partially just sort of reminisce about the wonderful Fox X-Men movies and like what they meant to superhero cinema at the time, and also try to connect them all to each other in what is, a fool's errand, and always has been for X-Men fans, but I think is a fun exercise and is a fun way to just like remember what we loved about these movies, kind of why they're fun and quirky. And that video is an hour and a half long. I don't know if technically it is longer than any X-Men movie to date. I would have to assume if it is, it's probably either X-Men Origins Wolverine or New Mutants or Dark Phoenix. Maybe those to me feel like they would be the shortest ones just because they're like not that great. But you can watch Lindsay's video right now exclusively on this video sponsor, Nebula. You guys have heard me talk about Nebula before. It is a subscription streaming service that I helped to create. A bunch of us video essayists, and I don't like call myself a content creator, but like content creators got together and were like, hey, these platforms we have to work with, they're great, but they have some problems. And the big one is we wanted to just make great videos, give them to you guys. We wanted to make a nice, clean, well-organized place where you can go to watch all of our videos. They all go up early, so every Nando V Movies video and Nando Cut video go up early. They're all ad-free. You can download them to your phone, which is a feature I don't hear nearly enough people talking about, but is incredibly useful. Like if you don't want to have to eat up all your data or deal with the Wi-Fi at the gym or something, download some videos. You'll have them with you. Also, This is a thing that wasn't a concern when we started Nebula, but has become a concern when talking about the other platforms is, I don't know about you, but when I jump onto other platforms, I am flooded with AI. We were talking about it just now in regards to the Thor trailer. Like, it is everywhere, and it makes finding information, especially useful information, really, really difficult, because you don't know if it is being made by a person, and if it's not being made by a person, A, you don't want to support it because AI is bad, but B, like, if you're trying to learn something or get some information, AI just makes stuff up. So, like, I have gone to so many videos trying to learn things about comic book characters that I kind of know some stuff about, but don't know everything about. Like, oh, I want to get brought up to speed on, like, the full story of Cable or something like that, and just immediately you hear something, and you're like, that's not true. Oh, this is AI. Okay, yeah, ignore that. The videos on Nebula are all made by real people, and that didn't used to have to be a selling point, but now I think it might be the best selling point. There's also all kinds of cool videos you can only find on Nebula. Like, Lindsay makes videos almost exclusively for Nebula. One of her most recent videos was about Bluey adults, and the one after that was about dash cam footage, so it really covers a pretty wide spectrum of things. Then you've got short films like Patrick Williams' Dinner Plan, or series like Maggie Mae Fish's Amy's Dead End Dreamhouse. And you have what we haven't, like, fully announced, but will be coming out sometime next year, our show Subliminal. It's our first, like, dramatic series. I wrote an episode. I think it's pretty good. I've seen parts of it now because it's, like, coming together and been edited and all that, and, like, it looks great. I can't wait for you guys to see it. If you want to support us, give us more opportunities to do cool stuff like that, and you want to see our videos early, ad-free, download them and see other creators on Nebula, because all of your favorite creators and your next few favorite creators are on Nebula right now. Like, there's something for everybody. And a yearly subscription to Nebula is $60 for a whole year. That is $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/NandoVMovies, or use the link in this video's description, or check out the QR code, you can get a year of Nebula for just $30. That is $2.50 a month. Go check Nebula out now. It is the best Nebula deal. You can also gift someone a subscription, maybe a late holiday gift. And if you want to check Nebula out on your own, sign up for a 3-day trial. I guarantee you will find something you like. Again, that is go.nebula.tv/NandoVMovies. As always, thank you to everybody who continues to support the channel on Patreon. Thank you to everybody who listens to my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking, and everybody that follows me on social media. I'm NandoVMovies everywhere. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.